Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Parminder Sandhu, one of the Corporate Solutions Managers here at IML. Thank you so much for taking the time today for today's webinar on Are You Being Paid to Do Everyone Else's Job? A really interesting way, interesting topic of time management, a different perspective of looking at this. So you should have received already a HBR article when you first signed up for the webinar that introduces you to the monkey on the back metaphor. If you haven't, you can always request that from us at the end, as usual, when you request the resources. We're just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we start. We're going to do things a bit differently on this webinar. So instead of just taking questions at the end like we usually do, Jackie's going to be posing questions throughout, just little challenges and things to prompt your thinking and different ways that you could do things. So if you could use the chat box or the question box, whichever one you can find, I'll be looking through both of them. And hopefully this makes it much more interactive and interesting for you. So please do keep an ear out for when Jackie's prompting you for those thoughts and comments. So we're going to start off shortly with about 50 minutes of content from Jackie, so a little bit longer than we usually go for. And if we do wrap up a bit quicker and we have time, then we'll take some questions at the end. So when you're putting your questions through, you just let me know if it's one for at the end or if it's related to what Jackie's talking about on that particular slide. As always, you'll get an email from us at the end with the webinar recording, so you can revisit this at any time. And Jackie is going to mention a number of resources throughout. So again, if you didn't get the HBR article at the start and you do want the resources, just email us at info@managersandleaders.com.au. I'll remind you this again before we finish up. So now to introduce you to Jackie. For anyone who doesn't know Jackie Perkins, Jackie is one of our best facilitators here at IML and delivers our public foundations program, as well as our customized in-house programs for many of our corporate members. She approaches life and learning with curiosity, high energy, a healthy dose of realism. So no doubt you'll get something practical from this and a few laughs along the way. I'm going to hand over to Jackie now, but I will be popping in through with any questions that you've got, so I'll see you shortly. Over to you, Jackie.
And thank you. So if you have a look at the title, Are You Being Paid to Do Everyone Else's Job? Whose monkeys are you carrying and why? I think maybe a good way to contextualize that is to think about, the key distinction between an individual contributor and then someone who's now moved into a management or a leadership role. And I think one of the big factors that we face when we move from an individual contributor to a leader manager role is that I now am not only responsible for my KPIs and my deliverables and being assessed and evaluated on my work, now suddenly I'm being assessed and evaluated on my ability to get results out of other people. So I know, one of my roles in Johannesburg was sales manager of a radio station with 20 sales consultants and promotions and sponsorships consultants reporting into me. And I was so desperate for them to succeed, and I was so desperate for them to hit their targets and for us as a team to make our team targets, that if they were, flagging in any way or not coping with something or not able to deliver on something, I felt I needed to jump in and do it so that we could at least be successful as a team, because I felt it reflected poorly on me as a manager if my team wasn't performing. And then what happened was I set up a kind of codependency or a learned helplessness, where it just became go to Jackie, she'll sort it out, go to Jackie, she'll do it. And I just found myself walking around with all these monkeys on my back. So come 5 o'clock, they've all clocked off and gone home. And I'm sitting near my office with steam coming out of my ears, trying to finish off their proposals or whatever. And yet they'd be the ones that would get the bonus check or the commission at the end of the month for all this work that I'd helped them do. So that's what we want to talk about today is, what are the consequences of carrying these monkeys? And I'm going to just go through some of these consequences, and if any of these resonate with you, it would be really awesome if you want to just put it in the little chat box or the little question box and say, yes, this one really speaks to me. So the first one I mentioned already is learned helplessness, and this was a term that I actually discovered when I went to have a meeting with the headmistress of my eldest son's school when he was in grade 2, and she called me in and she said, Mrs. Perkins, I think your son is suffering from learned helplessness, and I think you've inflicted him with the disease. And of course I was highly offended and highly upset and couldn't believe she could say something like that to me. And but then I went away and I reflected on it and I thought about it. And I realized that, you know, he would come home and I'd unpack his school bag, I'd look in the homework book, I'd sit and go through everything that needed to be done. And he wasn't taking any ownership or responsibility for it. And then I found I was doing the exact same thing with my team. They would come to me and say, oh, Jackie, we've got this big presentation to Ogilvy and Mather tomorrow. Could you have a look at it? And could you have a look at it actually meant me reworking the whole proposal instead of me pushing back and saying, well, you know, what do you think you should do here? What thought have you put into it? What guidelines have you assessed? And just kept on pushing it back. I created this massive learned helplessness culture within my team, which leads into the second one, is that it adds a whole lot more work to myself as a leader and a whole lot more stress, because I'm now trying to deliver on my KPIs and what I need to do, but I'm trying to do everyone else's job as well. So, I mean, these people have been employed and paid to do a job, and yet I'm doing half of it for them. It just doesn't make any sense. So that leads me on to the third, you know, the third consequence. It's a poor use of business resources. So, you know, let's just say, for argument's sake, you know, if I had to take my annual salary, it, you know, worked out to $250 an hour. And you know, maybe you've got a sales rep who's working mainly on commission and their basic salary is $25 an hour. Me running around and doing all this work for them means I'm actually spending my money on doing someone else's job. It's not a good use of resources for the business, because they were expecting me to get out there and land big clients and develop great networks and develop great relationships, which I couldn't do because I was so busy in the weeds trying to do, you know, my team's work. Which leads to the fourth one, is that my teams now are then actually disempowered and are missing out on an opportunity to build those skill sets, to actually put a presentation together, to put a proposal together, to have negotiations with higher level clients, because I would be so busy stepping in, helping them, but actually disempowering them. Which leads to the fifth one, that, you know, it would be very difficult for me to phone in sick on a day, because I'd get 20 phone calls at home going, Jackie, what do I do here? What do I do here? And if I wanted to take annual leave, it would be constant bombardment with, I'm busy with this, I'm busy with this, can you help me? And I'd be feeling, well, how can I not step in and help? It means, you know, the team's not going to make their sales target. I better jump in and I better help. Which leads to the final one, which is, you know, well, how do I actually move up the corporate ladder if, you know, the executive team are looking and going, well, we can't possibly promote Jackie out of this position because her team depend on her so much, you know. So I was almost trapping myself into a position because no one could operate unless I was actually hands-on. So we really want to be thinking about that. And also, you might be saying to yourself, it's not just your teams that you're picking up work for. It might be, you know, picking up extra work that your manager is expecting you to do that you simply just don't have the capacity to do, or other departments. So I'd love just to hear from you, which of those resonate with you? Paminda, have we got any comments on which resonate with people?
Yep, I think you've really hit the mark here, Jackie. I think there's we're getting a lot of comments through, particularly around for number one, but I also think how it impacts people's ability to take time off. So we've got Margot here saying that, I hope you don't mind me saying your name here, but Margot saying that everybody else can have the day off, but actually if she has the day off, everything falls apart. And the stress and the pressure of that, yeah, it's just ridiculous. And I think also about people being unable to be promoted unless they can train their 2IC. So yeah, really resonating with a lot of people. And I think also in personal life, Rosemary mentioned about some of this being with her husband, and I can relate for that with my husband, who doesn't know how to work the washing machine unless I'm there. So yeah, really resonating.
Yeah, good. Thank you, everyone. So yes, you're absolutely right. This is in our personal life as well. If we don't want to be the one that's doing all the washing and the ironing and the cooking and the cleaning and the blah blah blah, we've also got to make sure we're not just actually creating learned helplessness because we just jump in and do it, rather than just you know, taking that monkey and putting it firmly back on the person's back that it belongs to. So let's talk about, we're going to cover off on 6 strategies. Now, I'm not going to read through all 6 of them right now because it's going to be a waste of our time, but I am going to go through all of those 6 strategies. And then at the end of the session, I'm going to ask you to tell me either in the chat box or the question box which of those 6 strategies you actually think would work for you. So the first strategy is about creating a clear overall purpose of your role. Now, particularly now with COVID-19, what I'm hearing from a lot of companies is that they've had to, retrench people, or people have had to go from a 5-day week to a 3-day week or whatever. But all this work still has to be done. So that means that other people that are still working full-time or still employed with that organization are now picking up a lot of extra work. And the organizations are not able to now crank out new position descriptions, bam, overnight to accommodate this new person's additional roles and responsibilities. So I actually want to just share a really, really great exercise with you and give you a fantastic little tool that is going to help you create your own almost position description, within an hour, that you can sit with your manager and your team and really have a robust conversation around, well, actually, what are my roles and responsibilities? Because I seem to have picked up 4 people's lots of work. I'm actually not sure what is more important than others. All I know is I'm doing 10, 12-hour days, running around like a chicken without a head, and I just need some clarity. I just need some direction around what is and isn't important and what I need to put to one side. So one of the ways we can do that very importantly is to first stop off and go, well, what am I actually trying to achieve here? So, if I work in the sales team or the HR team or the logistics team, what are these team goals? What are they actually trying to achieve here? And how do those team goals align to the organizational goals? And how does that align to the overall vision, mission, and purpose? Am I working on stuff that actually matters? Now, so if I give you an example like this, it's a very crass, simple example, but let's say I am putting in a 10-hour day, 5 days a week, sometimes a 12-hour day. And the performance review time is coming along, and the performance rating system at my work happens to be that if you get a 4, you rock. If you get a 1, you suck. Okay, so I'm thinking to myself, well, sheepers, I'm putting in a 10 to 12-hour day. I'm going to get 4s all the way. And I go in and I have my performance review, and I'm getting 2s and 3s. And I'm going, geez, why would I be getting 2s and 3s? I've been killing myself putting in these 10 to 12-hour days. So what has actually gone wrong here? What the hell has happened here? So hopefully what's going through your head is, yes, you're working hard, but are you working on the right stuff? And when I say the right stuff, is it the stuff that your manager and your manager's manager see as critically important to the business? So you might think it's critically important to the business, but they don't. Or you've actually just been a deer in the headlight, and anything that comes your way, you just smashed with it and you do it. But when you step back and have a look at it, you haven't really evaluated whether it's actually adding critical value to the strategic direction of the business. So what we want to do is make sure that what you think is important, what you think adds value to the business, actually is how your manager sees it and how your manager's manager sees it, so that you're actually doing stuff that's valued rather than working your backside off and it's not being seen as a critical part of the business success. So I'm going to give you a little exercise to do. I want you to pretend that your CEO has made an announcement that due to very bad financial results this year, which is probably going to be the case or has been the case for a lot of organizations this year, that we now are having to downsize and we are going to have to make 20% of the roles redundant. Now, I just want to stress it's not the people we're letting go, it's the roles we're letting go. So this CEO now says to you, you have an opportunity to put together a 5-minute presentation on why your role is so crucial to the success of the business. That if we got rid of your role, it actually would have an impact on the business. So it really makes you sit down and think about the stuff that I do all day, every day, those 10 hours, is it actually adding value to the critical business outcomes for what the business is trying to achieve and for what the executive team values and says is important. And in doing this exercise, I'm going to get you to get someone to play devil's advocate with you. So I'm going to get you to ask someone that you trust to sit down and actually challenge you. So everything you put on the table, they need to challenge you whether you couldn't possibly outsource that particular part of your job, or whether that job really is adding value to the success of the organization, so that you really made to think about it. And that should give you some insight into that alignment around what is important and what isn't important. Now, this doesn't mean to say that you are wrong and your manager is right. What it does mean to say is, are you actually on the same page? And if not, what are you going to do about it? So this is a little tool that if you email programs at IML, they will flick off to you as a little job clarification tool with an opportunity to actually take some notes in it. I've just condensed it in the slide for today. It asks you to write down the overall purpose of your role in one succinct sentence. And the little clues is to answer the question, why does my job exist? What would the impact be on the organization if it didn't exist? So that's almost like your true north. It's the kind of thing you should have up above your monitor, that every morning before you start anything, you look at it and go, that's the overall purpose of my role. So I don't just get on a hamster wheel and step into a whirlwind and go running in all different directions, but that's my true north. That's what I'm trying to focus on. Now, instead of a position description with this whole long list of roles and responsibilities, you want to just keep this very, very simple and go, right, in order to be successful in this role, what are the 4 to 6 key areas, not tasks, not jobs, key areas that I need to focus on to make sure that this role is successful? So if I give you an example, let's go back to me now being in sales, and I want you to take those 4 to 6 key areas and divide them by 100%. So let's say I'm sitting there as a sales manager, and I would have in there, client new business development, client relationship management, recruiting my team, motivating and managing my team, budgets. So you with me? Documentation might be in there, like the CRM system. Now, let's say I took the 100% and I put 40% next to documentation and 20% next to new business development. The exec team, the sales director would probably have a cadenza and go, what the hell are you doing spending 40% of your time on documentation and 20% on new business development? You should be spending 50% of your time on new business development. So it gives us this opportunity to have a robust conversation, because I might then say, well, no one else is filling out the CRM system. It's very clunky, it's very old, and it actually takes me hours and hours. So in reality, it's taking up 40% of my time. And then the sales director can go, that's ridiculous that 40% of your time is going into documentation. I need you out there networking with our top tier clients. So it gives us an opportunity to see where our time is going. Are we happy with where our time is going? And talking to our managers and saying, well, where would you prefer this time to go for us to be successful as a team and successful as a business? Once we've done that, I think the most key little question to ask yourself is, before we step into the whirlwind of answering emails, answering the phone, going on meetings, talking to people at our desk, is to just step back and go, is this the best use of my time right now? So if someone comes to you with a monkey on their back and they want to pass the monkey on to you by saying, hey, Jackie, could you just have a look at this? Could you just help me with this? Have you just got 5 minutes for me? Spot the monkey. Okay, there's a monkey on their back, which they are trying to very successfully navigate across to you so it can leap across and jump onto your back. But they're not the only person doing it. There's maybe 5, 10, 15 people doing it. And by the time you go, you've got 15 monkeys sitting on your back. So that when you pick up your compass at the end of the day and you look at it, you go, I've worked so hard. I've been in so many meetings, phone calls, emails. I've been with people all day. I've helped so many people. But when I look at my compass and I look to see whether I've actually been heading true north towards the direction of achieving our goals, I actually realize I've been heading friggin' south. And what I have been is very busy, not productive. So you'll see I've highlighted my and now. Is this the best use of my time? Am I supposed to be doing this, or would it be better to push it back to that person? Or should it be delegated to an entirely different team? And then the next thing is, now, do I have to drop everything that I'm doing right now to help this person? Or is actually what I'm working on more of a priority. So once you've completed that, that's where I suggest you actually sit down with your manager and say, right, I'd like you to complete that job clarification summary on my behalf. Then I'd like to share mine with you, and let's see if it matches. And I want you just to be thinking now, if you did that exercise, how confident are you that yours would match with your managers? The cherry on the top is to do this with your team. So to get everyone in your team to complete that job clarification summary, identify their 4 to 6 key areas, divide it by 100%. You do it on their roles, they do it on their roles. You don't look at each other's until they complete. Then you call a meeting and you compare them and you go, well, how do they see their role? How do you see their role? And do you have the same understanding as to what their focuses should be as they do? Because if they're working on stuff that you don't think is important, they're wasting their time, or has a lot of stuff that should be sitting in their bucket now suddenly landed in your bucket, and you need to be talking about how you make sure you get it back in their bucket, get that monkey back onto their shoulders. So the second strategy we want to talk about. Now, while I'm talking, I want you to be thinking or making a little note in the chat box, which of these strategies actually are resonating with you. So the second strategy is having some self-awareness around this. I always make a statement, you'll never change your behavior until you change the way you think. If you're not aware of why you're doing something, you can't change that behavior. So I want you just to develop some self-awareness questions before you take the monkey. So as that person comes in and says, oh, could you just have a look at this? Or could you just help me with this? Or, you know, is this something that you could do? Spot the monkey and go, all right, hold on a second. Let me just run through these questions and see which of these. So I'm going to ask you to make a little note in your little chat box if any of these resonate with you, which one of these questions would really help you. So first question, does this task align with my roles and responsibilities? So is it actually going to help me be successful in my role? Number 2, is this the best use of my time? So is this something I should be doing? And do I actually need to do it right now? So I'll give you an example. My brother has quite a senior role with the organization in Victoria. And they've got 2 personal assistants that are shared with the senior managers, and the printing machine is like a couple of flights down, and if the printing paper runs out and he asks the PAs to go and fill the printing machine up with paper, you know, they make comments like they don't have time, or, you know, just because they're women, why should they have to do it? And he ends up walking down 3 flights of stairs and filling it up. Now, I'm asking myself, why is someone earning $300 an hour walking down 3 flights of stairs to fill up the printing machine when someone earning $25 an hour is saying it's not their job? So really actually stepping back and going, is this a good use of companies' economic resources? This is ridiculous. This is not about me being lazy or me not being a team player or me being sexist. It is ridiculous that someone earning $300 an hour is walking down 3 flights of stairs to fill up a printing machine. So number 3, am I taking this on because I have always said yes in the past? So, you know, I like to please people. I like to keep them happy. People expect it of me. And I've always just said yes, and now it's just become a habit. Or am I taking this on because I don't know how to say no and I want to keep the relationship intact? It could be my boss asking me, or it could be someone pretty senior in the organization, and I really don't want to create any, you know, offense or people being upset with me or cause confrontation. So I want to say no, but it's just easier to say yes. Or is it because I should be delegating this job, but I don't? And there could be a number of reasons. I think they might stuff it up. I think they're too busy. It's something I like doing. I don't have the time to show them how to do it. Or is it the last one? I'm creating learned helplessness in my team. So if I step in and do this, I'm actually disempowering them and creating learned helplessness. So do any of those 7 questions, which of those questions would help you? If you had to stop and ask yourself those questions, which would help you? Yes, Paminda.
Hey, Jackie, yeah, we're getting a good response on this. I think particularly around wanting to keep a relationship intact and therefore not wanting to say no. I think that's really resonating with a lot of people. But also I think around the question about is it the best use of my time right now, is a really good one that people are saying that would help them in that moment to just reframe and be able to sort of get over their usual answers. I've got a lot of people saying all of the above. So I think, yeah, we're getting a lot of responses here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So thank you, Paminda. Thank you, everybody, for that feedback. And I'm definitely going to be addressing each of those. So number 3 is changing your internal narrative. So I mentioned it before, you'll never change your behavior until you change the way you think. So I'm never going to behave assertively if I'm not thinking assertively. Yeah. So when I'm passive, my thinking is, oh, I don't want to upset you, I don't want to offend you, I don't want to confront you, I don't want people to think that I'm not a team player, so I'll just, you know, roll over and do it. So that would be passive thinking, which results in passive behavior. I'll do that, yes, sure, that's fine, leave it with me, even though it's going to take me all night to do it. Aggressive thinking would be, you know, that's not my job, this is my job, why should I do your job? Which would translate into aggressive behavior. I'm not doing that, that's your job, you just go off and do it. So we don't want either of those. We want assertive behavior, and assertive behavior can only result as a result of assertive thinking. So assertive thinking is saying, you've got a job to do, it's important to you, you have stresses, you have challenges, and you have certain expectations, and you need help, and I recognize that and I understand that. I have a job to do, I have challenges, I have stresses, I need help, I have only so many hours in a day, and I need to protect that. So somewhere between the two of us, you need to find a way to get your job done, and I need to find a way to get my job done. Let's have a discussion that is collaborative and rational about what part is your role and what part is my role, so that we both come out of here with a fair outcome, rather than you taking on more work than you should, or me taking on more work than I should. Let's discuss it. So that is assertive thinking, which leads to assertive behavior. But if my thinking is, oh, you know, who am I? How can I stand up to the manager? You know, oh, they're going to think I'm not a team player. My manager's going to think that I'm not helpful. If I'm thinking that way, I'm never going to have an assertive conversation. So we almost want to think things like, you know, I have a responsibility to empower my team. I actually have an obligation to develop my team to be able to do this. I actually have the responsibility to share with my manager that I'm overloaded with a key work priority right now, and by taking on this additional work, this priority is going to suffer. I have an obligation to share that with my manager. So changing that language to, I have an obligation, I have a responsibility to ensure the right people do the right jobs, I have a responsibility to share my workload so that we can get the right stuff done, changes your behavior from, oh, I'm not a team player, to actually I have a right to share my concerns because I'm doing it in the best interest of the team or the organization. So strategy number 4 gives you a little technique or tactic to say no. Now, just before we talk about it, I just want you to make a note of the power of your nonverbals. So please remember, your nonverbals are 93% of your message. So when I talk about nonverbals, it's your pace, it's your pause, it's your volume, it's an upward inflection or a downward inflection, as well as all your hand gestures and facial expressions, etc., etc. Now, when you use this little framework, it's really important that there are 2 things that you implement in terms of nonverbals. You need to use pause, and you need to use a downward inflection, as opposed to an upward inflection. You don't want an upward inflection, you want a downward inflection. You don't want to rattle it off, you want to use pause. Now, when you have a downward inflection and pause, you sound genuine. If you rattle it off with an upward inflection, you sound scripted and ingenuine. So when I give you the script, put the pause and the downward inflection. So going to the script. So when you need to refuse a request, particularly if it's a manager, You want to start the conversation off in a way that it triggers an opportunity response, not a threat response. So if you start off with, I can't do that, I'm too busy, I can't help you, immediately we trigger a response from your manager or other people where we're going to get combative. So the first words that come out of our mouth need to be, I'd really love to help you. I'm happy to help you. I can see you need some support here. But can you just hear if I say it this way? I'm really happy to help you. I'd like to help you. I can see you need some support here. Can you see? They just go, oh my God, that's so scripted. She doesn't mean one brass farthing of that. So it's got to be downward inflection and pause. I can see you need some help here. I'm more than happy to help you. You do not follow that statement with a but, however, unfortunately. The minute you go, look, I'm happy to help you, but we've just triggered a threat response. So I'm really happy to help you, Paminda. I can see you need some support here. Full stop, new sentence. In order to do that, I would have to. So Paminda, I'm really happy to help you. I can see you really struggling and you need some support. In order for me to help you, I would probably have to delay what I'm working on right now. And Anne's waiting for it. And I know she's really feeling a bit stressed about getting it before 2 o'clock today. Or I'm going to have to delegate what I'm working on to Peter. He doesn't have the experience that I have, but you know, that is an option. Or I'm going to have to go back to Anne and negotiate a new deadline. I know that's going to cause a bit of stress for her, but it is something I could do. So Paminda, tell me, what do you think the best thing to do is here? So you take the monkey and you put it back. So Paminda, what do you think we need to do here? What would you like to do here? So she's now really got to consider the impact and the consequences of giving you this monkey. And she might think that the impact and the consequences are not worth it, and she might decide to keep the monkey. Or you could say, who else do you think could help you? So just going, there are other options out here. It's not just me, because maybe I'm just the go-to person and I've just become the go-to person because I always say yes. Now we want to start going, well, there are other people in this team as well. Who else do you think could help you? So if that resonates with you, just put a little mention, yep, I like saying no, I like the way we can say no, that would be helpful to me. Strategy number 5 is delegating with confidence. Now, something I've come to realize when I work with a lot of clients around delegation is the reason they don't is actually multi-layered, and I've put up some suggestions there. So some reasons we don't delegate is just quick if I do it myself. If I do delegate it, I'm worried they're going to mess it up. I actually enjoy doing this work. I don't want to give it to someone else. This is the part of my job I love. I don't want to overload my team. I think they're at capacity. If I give it to someone, they're just going to think I'm palming off my work and I'm lazy. So I'm going to ask you, which of those resonate with you, or are there any others that resonate with you? So just pop it in the little chat box of the questions. If any of those resonate with you, pop them in there. Paminda, if you've got anyone that's actually commented on any of those, you can share with me.
Sure, and we're just getting some comments through from the last strategy as well, which people are finding that it's really easy to translate that into something practical. So thank you for that. And in terms of delegation, we're getting some comments around how they don't want to overload anyone else. So real consideration for others and their workload. And I think some around, that they're going to stuff it up and not do it quite right. I think that's a really familiar one. And we're also getting that. Let's just have a look here. It's just really, it's quicker if they do it, but then they also understand that they're creating that learned helplessness in the team. So it's that really tricky balance.
Yes.
Yeah. There's quite a few there that people are resonating with.
Awesome. Thank you, Paminda. So I'm going to share a visual with you to help you change your narrative and your mindset, because I've put there, change your internal narrative so you can change your default approach to delegating. So I'm going to share a little story with you. When we first immigrated to Australia now about 10 years ago, my husband got a job in Toowoomba and we were in Brisbane. So I was in Brisbane with 3 kids. We went on a school bus run, and I now was in a situation where I was trying to work. I had no relationships here at all. So there was no auntie or uncle or granny or granddad to say, could you take the kids to school? Could you fetch them? I didn't know anyone. And then I got this project where I had to fly all over the country, and I'm going, holy moly, I don't know what we're going to do. My husband's in tour with 3 kids, have to get to school and all the extramurals and the shopping and blah, blah, blah. And my eldest son was 17 at the time, and he said, oh, Mom, do you know in Australia you can actually go and get your driver's license at 17, because in South Africa you can only get it at 18. And he said, I'll just go get my driver's license, and then I can take everyone to school, I can take everyone to extramural activities, I can do the shopping. I said, sure, off you go. And he comes back, he says, Mom, do you know you have to have 100 hours to get your license here? So, oh, okay. All right, let's get these 100 hours. So every time I went to get in the car, he'd say, let me drive. And I'd go, no, 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 no. I'm too stressed. I'm too busy. You're not driving. I can't take the chance of you, smashing the car. And I don't have time to teach you right now. I just need to get them back and blah, blah, blah. And he just said, Mom, if you don't ever let me drive, I'm never, ever going to get these 100 hours. So the way I was looking at it is I have to put all this time, effort, and energy in coaching him how to drive. And right now the output is minimal, okay, minimal. But eventually when he's got his license, the output is amazing. You can take everyone to school, do all the extramurals, do the shopping, and I've got to put very little in. So I want you to think of your internal narrative. Oh my God, I just don't have time to teach this person how to do it. That right now it seems like a lot of work you've got to put in for very little output, but eventually that's going to swing, and you're going to have to you're going to have huge output for very, very little input. And one of the big things is we have to understand that a lot of coaching goes into it. And the reason delegations fail is because we don't put the time to actually coach. So I've given you a 5-step delegation framework there. In the resources that IML will send to you, there's a great little video clip with these 5 steps and how they work. There's also a brilliant little delegation checklist that I've designed, which will give you a really good framework to sit down and have a discussion to make sure that person is set up to succeed. So part of those 5 steps is going through, have you really understood what the deadline is, the resources and the deliverables, so that you can articulate that and set them up to be successful. So you don't want to delegate something to someone where the deadline is in 2 days' time and there's no time for them to learn, there's no time to be coached. So that maybe you wouldn't delegate, or you delegate it to someone very competent already. But where there's maybe a 3-month deadline and there's time to coach, that's maybe a great opportunity. Have they got the resources? We don't want to throw them out there and suddenly they don't have the resources, and we want to be able to describe the goal to them. Have we thought through what the goal looks like? Have we thought through what the deliverables look like, so they know exactly what's expected? Very importantly is to choose the right person. So, not only must they have the competencies to do the job and be committed to do the job, but also what is their character. So, we often talk about the DISC profile. So someone who's a C is very analytical and loves spreadsheets, the conscientious. And someone who's an I is the big picture and the people person and the outgoing stuff. Now, if I had to go to the I and say, I'd love you to please create a spreadsheet with everyone's leave roster for the Christmas period for 300 staff, the I is going to phone in sick the next day and not ever do it and procrastinate. And then I'm going to say, you see, I should never have delegated it. Or if I went to the C, the conscientious, and said, I want you to create a social club where we all get together once a month for lunch so we all get to know each other better. The C is going to phone in sick the next day and never ever do it. And again, we go, C, should never have delegated it. It's about delegating jobs not only based on skill, but is it a good fit for that personality profile? So really making sure we're thinking about the fit of the job to the person. Is it something that inspires and motivates them, or is it something that frigging terrifies them, where they're just going to keep procrastinating because it's not something within their zone? The delegation checklist is a brilliant, brilliant little tool. It gives you all the little steps around, what is the background of the task, what resources do we need, why this person was selected, what they will learn through the assignment, what value they will add, what challenges they would foresee. So you really have a holistic discussion that they have covered every base by the time you finish that discussion. And the most important thing probably is deciding on the level of authority you're going to give them. And this is where delegations go so wrong, because sometimes we just empower someone who doesn't have the commitment or the competency or the confidence to be empowered. So we maybe involve them. Or maybe it's just a simple delegation where it's just to tell, I need you to do this by then, and this is how I need you to do it. So based on that person's competency, their commitment, their character, and their capacity, you would decide, is this an empower where I let them run, or do I sit and actually involve them throughout the process? I do some stuff, they do some stuff, we discuss it, we share it, we coach, or is it just a simple tell, you'll do it like this, by when, in this way? And of course, you need the regular feedback session so the person knows what's working, what's not working, and what we would do differently next time. So if this has resonated with you, make a little note in the chat bar and go, well, you know, these are some things around delegation that I think I'm going to be more intentional about. These are some steps I'm going to put in that I haven't put in before, or these are some things that would be helpful to me when it comes to delegating. And I think this is the reason I haven't been delegating, but now that I have this knowledge, I might be more willing to delegate. So Paminda, if you've got any kind of feedback from anyone on delegation, just let me know. Otherwise, we can move on to the next strategy.
Yeah, we'll just give everyone a couple of moments to send their responses through. What I might do is ask you a question, Jackie. What, in terms of selecting the right delegate and considering their DISC personality and their preference, what do you do if you've got a team full of Ds, or you've got a team full of Is, and the task is just not suitable for anyone's personality in that team? How do you manage that situation?
Yeah, that's a horrible question, Paminda, because I have no idea.
Keeping you on your toes.
But it's a very good question. So I suppose then it's about appealing to people who understand that we don't all have the luxury of doing things that are just in our zone, and that might have identified that that's a skill they actually would like to challenge themselves on. So it might not be within their personality profile, but they realize that in order to get ahead within the organization, it's a skill they really need to challenge themselves on and learn, and this might be the best opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. And the comments coming through are really about selecting that right person. And I think your 4 Cs are really helpful there. And it's a different way of looking at things. And a lot of people coming back saying this is very timely for them, seeing how they can reallocate workload between managers, particularly with all the cuts and stuff that are being made. So yeah.
Okay, good, awesome. So our next strategy is strategy number 6, which is where we want to eliminate learned helplessness. And we do this by asking the right questions. And I love that little slide that says asking the right questions takes as much skill as giving the right answers. Because I think often in management we think, oh, I need to have the answers, I need to tell them what to do. This is my responsibility to have the information, but it's actually as difficult, maybe sometimes more difficult, to actually step back and go, well, what question am I actually going to ask? So I love this quote from Socrates, who says, I cannot teach you anything, I can only make you stop and think. So my job as a leader manager is to develop critical thinkers. I want to develop people that have commitment. I don't want compliance. If I just tell and spoon feed, all I'm going to get is compliance. I'm not going to get commitment that comes from a place of people developing critical thinkers where they're proactive, they're energized, they take ownership. So I have a little mantra in my head, never tell when you can ask. So when someone says, Jackie, how do I? Never tell when you can ask. Step back and go, well, what approach would you take and why? What could you ask before you tell? So I'm going to share some questions that you could ask to try and create critical thinkers as opposed to learned helplessness. While we go through these, if you can think of any additional questions that sometimes maybe you ask to create critical thinkers and minimize learned helplessness, just pop them into the chat box to Paminda. So talk me through what you would do if I was not available. So you're always coming to me, you're always asking me, but what if I wasn't here? What would you do? Who would you go to? Where would you find this information? Sometimes it's just pure fucking laziness. Oh, Jackie will know, I'll just ask her. What do you think your first step should be? So just breaking it down. So, okay, well, let's let, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. What do you think the first thing is that you need to do? What research have you put into this before asking me? Did you just come to me straight away and ask me, or what thinking have you actually put into it so far? When did you face a similar situation? And what did you do? You know, so talk me through, you must have been through this situation before. What did you do? Think back to how you handled it. Who do you think you could ask beside myself? Where could you get this information from? If you take that approach, what are some of the risks and benefits? So if they give you an answer and it's a really stupid answer, instead of saying, no, man, that's not how you do it, this is how you do it, still keep on trying to develop critical thinkers by going, well, if you took that line of action, what do you think some of the risks would be? What do you think some of the consequences would be? And then talk me through how you plan to mitigate some of these risks. So again, just keep on pushing it back. Don't feel you have to step in now and take over because they gave you a bad answer. So any of those questions that you really, really like, or any questions you would like to add to that list? Paminda, any that have come up for you?
We'll just give everyone a couple of moments, but
Okay.
for me, this is a very difficult thing for me to personally do because my self-awareness is that I'm a control freak. So for me, it's definitely been a challenge to actually ask some of these questions, but it just changes the nature of the conversation completely from feeling that pressure that you're about to take something on, than actually keeping that monkey on somebody else's back. I think these questions are really helpful, and that's definitely what people are finding here in the comments as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Paminda. So let's pull it all together. So for taking the monkey, think about the pros and cons of taking the monkey. What are the pros and cons to yourself, to your team, to the business if you are to take that monkey on? Develop some self-awareness as to why you're taking that monkey. So go through those questions. Why are you taking that monkey on? And once you're aware of taking that monkey on, then really go and challenge your internal narrative. How are you going to change that from, I don't want to offend, I don't want to upset, I don't want them to think badly of me, I don't want them to think I'm lazy or I'm not a team player too. Actually, I have an obligation to empower my team. I actually have an obligation to ensure the right people are doing the right jobs. And now that you're in a position to change your behavior, then look at some of the 6 strategies we've covered and decide which of these will work for you. So as we mentioned, so while I'm talking, I'd really love you just to put into the chat bar which of the 6 strategies you would find the most helpful, so that out of those top 6 strategies we spoke about, which of them would be the most helpful to you. For the links to the video and the resources like the delegation checklist and the video on the art of delegating, please just contact and you'll also get the slides as well. Just contact info at managers and leaders. So Paminda, any comments on which strategies have resonated the most with people?
Yep, I think definitely around the delegating, because I think that's something that naturally people find quite hard to do. A really interesting comment from Jason that he'd been told by one of his managers, and I've definitely experienced this, where the manager said to always approach him with a solution and not a problem. So I think that's already getting that critical thinking part going. And I think also we've got Nick talking about how changing your internal narrative, which that's a very difficult thing to do, especially if being assertive can be seen quite negatively sometimes. We've actually had Andreas who's recommending a book, 1 Minute Manager and the Monkeys. So that's an interesting recommendation. Thank you for that, Andreas. And we've got Paul asking about whether we'll send the slides, and we definitely will do that with the recording or when you request the resources.
Perfect, lovely. Thank you everyone. Great commentary. So any additional, do we have time? Yes, we do have some time. Any additional questions you might have thought of that we haven't answered? If you want to just pop them in the little question bar to Paminda, and Paminda can share them with me.
Yep, no problem. I've got a few to take us over while we wait. So one question from Emma is, if you're at a very junior level and you're being asked to do things from more senior managers, what kind of questions do you think that she could use in her position to push back, remembering that, you know, this is to somebody who's far more senior?
Yeah, I still think going back to that power of no, of being able to say, absolutely, I want to help you. I can see that this is important and it needs to get done. And my job is to facilitate your role and everyone else's role. I get that. So it's really, you know, emphasizing that I'm not too big for this or too important for this. I know my job is to facilitate and smooth the wheels for everyone. I've been, and sometimes keeping, some people either have like a little whiteboard near their desk, or they actually have a sheet of paper near their desk where they've actually written down everything that's been delegated to them, because someone in a more junior position sometimes has stuff being delegated to them from 5, 6 different people. So if you have a running list of stuff with the name next to each of those things that have been delegated, then just to say, look, this is what has been delegated to me today. These are the people that have delegated to me. Would you help me see where would be the best place to fit it? Because, you know, you're senior to me, you understand the business better than me. It would be really helpful for me to know who I need to bump to fit yours in. So, you know, they're now making a decision because they're senior, who they're going to bump.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. Hopefully, Emma, you can use that and let us know how you go with that. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Andreas has actually made a really good point about what do you do when you ask these kind of questions to somebody you're trying to delegate a task to, and they keep coming back and saying they don't know, or they've got no idea. What would the approach be there?
Yeah, so at some point with some people, you are going to have to get them going. So maybe sometimes it's giving them the option of 3 things. Say, all right, okay, these are 3 options to you. Pick one of them and tell me why. So because you're trying to get them out of lazy thinking, and eventually the person is going to go, you know what, she's like a dog with a bone. She's actually not going to stop. I can sit here and say I don't know till the cows come home. She's just going to come back again. So okay, we'll pick one of these 3.
Yeah. That's a great tactic. I'll definitely be using that one. Got a couple of more questions. So you think this is a really interesting one. So I'm just looking down at my screen because I've got it scribbled down. But how do you overcome? So say we put all these strategies in place. How do you overcome the perception that you're perhaps underworking or not working as hard as everybody else because you're now actually only doing things that, you know, you may have your managers buy in, but what about your colleagues and the wider team? How do you overcome that perception that you're not working hard enough?
Yeah, and look, I do think this is a really important one, and sorry, just made me think about some of the farmers in South Africa, because a lot of their workers would say, oh, you know, they just sit in their nice house and do nothing, and we doing all the hard work out here under the hot sun. And then when some of those workers have actually been handed over the farms by the government, they just have been incapable of running them because they had no idea about the extent of budgets and money management and purchasing and delegating and all these things that we think are just, are you sitting behind a desk doing nothing, actually are very important skills that we need to have to run a successful business or a successful farm. So I think it's about in a team meeting is to say, you know, I have a responsibility as a manager or a leader of this team that we deliver results, which means I need time to think, I need time to strategize, I need time to plan, I need time to organize. If I'm just doing, I can't plan, I can't strategize, I can't delegate, I can't allocate resources. So if you think I'm sitting behind a desk doing nothing, I'm not. I'm planning, I'm strategizing, I'm thinking. I've got to have time to look at the vision and see if we're on track. There's all this stuff that is not necessarily hands-on work. So you, as a leader, you've got to trust that I'm doing that. And secondly, my job is to empower you. If I'm doing everything myself, I am actually denying you the opportunity of actually getting on and doing it. So at any point, if you're thinking I'm sitting on my fat bum doing nothing, I give you permission to come and challenge me, and I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing.
I love that. That's it's being very transparent and also holding yourself accountable to the team member as well. It's a great way of looking at it. Quite a difficult question now. Left the best till last. So obviously a lot of businesses have been impacted by the current situation and will continue to be. So what if you're already doing 2 or 3 people's roles because people are being made redundant, or there's only obviously so many people a company can keep? How do we actually employ those strategies right now?
Yeah. And I mean, that is the thing that went round and round in my head before we actually did this webinar is, you know, I think that this is the thing that everyone is facing at the moment. They've picked up 3 or 4 people's jobs, and how the hell are we going to actually push monkeys back when everyone's just drowning? I think it's about being selective about what monkeys you take. So it's being realistic that, you know, maybe we're not in the luxurious position where we've got the right amount of people to do the jobs, and we are going to have to pick up some monkeys because people have left. But being selective about what monkeys you take on, not just any or all monkeys. And that has to go back to that job clarification summary, where you have to sit down and talk to your manager and say, look, I'm aware that we've lost 4 people from the team. I'm not saying I can't pick up more work. I'm more than happy to contribute and go above and beyond. But seriously, I can't sustain a 12-hour working day, 5 days a week for the rest of my life. So if I'm not going to burn out, if the rest of the team's not going to burn out, can we please sit down and say, out of all these things that have to be done, what are the priorities? Let's pick the priorities and let's decide what is a number 1 priority and number 2, number 3. So I know what to say yes to, and I know what to say no to. So you can with confidence go, no, that monkey definitely needs to stay there.
And that's definitely having a very assertive narrative in your head, because you're feeling like you've got that responsibility to put that across to your manager and make them aware of that situation, because perhaps maybe they're not quite, you know, they don't know it quite as well as you are, you know, when you're facing it. Thank you so much for that, Jackie. We will bring it to a close now as well. I think you've definitely given everybody a lot to think about, and there's a lot of people that have really resonated with these strategies, so hopefully something that you can all put into practice. And this topic is something that's covered in far more detail than this in our Foundations of Intentional Leadership program. Now, we've got the last virtual cohort for 2020. We've still got a few spots remaining. That starts on the 8th of October. So if you're interested, of course, you can contact us to find out more or also enroll in that program. And the other thing I wanted to mention while we have you is we have our second virtual development day on the 30th of September. So the first one we did earlier this year was a huge success. So we wanted to roll that out again, but this time we're going to focus on resilience. So 4 different ways of looking at resilience. And as a member of the Institute, whether you're a corporate member or a professional, you can access that completely free and sign up to all 4 of the webinars plus a lunchtime networking session. So you can find that on our website, and that's on the 30th of September. So hopefully we'll get to see you there. As always, you'll get a recording of the webinar once we finish up today. But if you did want the resources, so the job clarification summary or any of the questions or the framework for saying no, yeah. And also the HBR article, if you didn't get it, then you can email info@managersandleaders.com.au and we'll be more than happy to send that through to you. As always, thank you so much for participating, for your questions, your comments and your ideas. It's been really fantastic. Thank you so much to Jackie, as always, and I hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Paminda. Thank you for hosting that so well. Thank you to everyone. It was lovely getting your feedback and your comments and questions. It made it a lot more engaging and interesting for me. So thank you.
All right.